What is equally galling about Sovereignty not running in Baltimore is that all we've heard for weeks now is how great he's doing. And, he would have been the perfect horse for the Triple Crown. He's built for it. He's a physically strong and what?
And welcome back to the Sportsnaut interview, everyone. We are joined by good friend Steve Byk, host of At the Races on SiriusXM Radio. You can catch him every day, Monday through Friday, 9 to 12, talking horse racing. And we've got a big horse race to talk about right now. The Belmont Stakes, the third race in the Triple Crown, gets underway this weekend, Saturday, from Saratoga Race Course. And Steve, as always, we appreciate your time and welcome back.
Thanks for having me back. I appreciate it. It's been a really terrific Triple Crown, obviously Derby and Preakness, and to have, the winners of those races plus Baeza back third in the Derby, it really sets up a terrific way to end the season.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more. And we're going to get into all of that. So let's get to it right now. Much was made about Sovereignty deciding to skip the Preakness following the Derby win. It came under a lot of scrutiny. The trainer, Belmont, was criticized a bit. I think some of the casual horse racing fans out there even thought possibly it was a bad decision for the sport overall. And, people thought that going into the Preakness, maybe the race lost a little bit of its juice without the Derby winner there. But then we had journalism who really kind of saved the day with that epic win, that come from behind win. And it all sets up now this much anticipated rematch between these two champion horses. And I think it's really interesting how the narrative around the sport has shifted a bit here in the last few weeks. At the Preakness I mentioned, the talk was about the horse that wasn't running in the race. Yeah. And again, now it's all about this big rematch that everyone's so excited to see. So I just want to get some of your thoughts on that.
Well, I was as critical as anybody of Godolphin and Belmont not running in the Preakness. And it wasn't as if they came out of Derby and wanted to see how the horse was doing. They never were running in the Preakness. They had made up their mind going into Derby that they were going to run in Kentucky and then wait the 5 weeks for Belmont. And it is a disservice to the game. Yeah. And it sort of runs counter to the whole dialogue we hear about what a great sportsman Sheikh Mohammed is from Godolphin. That's all we ever hear. Well, if he was such a great sportsman, they would have shown up in Baltimore. Without taking a shot, I would say that the vast majority of people that appreciate the nature of the Triple Crown season are rooting against Sovereignty in here on Saturday. I mean, openly. Yeah. And there's a number of reasons for that, most notably because if journalism can come back and win a second of the three races, as well as, running very credibly, a beaten second, by a length and change in the Derby, it really quiets this whole notion that today's thoroughbred can't compete, 3 times in 5 weeks. What is equally galling about Sovereignty not running in Baltimore is that all we've heard for weeks now is how great he's doing. And, he would have been the perfect horse for the Triple Crown. Yeah. He's built for it. He's a physically strong and what? If he was so wonderful and so suited for the Triple Crown, then run him. Yeah. Don't pick him up and bring him back to Saratoga and hide him up here for 5 weeks. I don't buy it, and I am openly rooting for him to get drilled on Saturday. Frankly, I'm not shy. I've made it very clear. The other portion of this story is Baeza. And at least with Baeza, who finished third in the Derby, he had not an excuse per se, but he's a horse who had only run 4 times coming into the Derby. He was giving away experience. And for him, I mean, if he had won the Derby by chance, John Sheriffs would have, been obligated. He would have shown up for the Preakness. Instead, he went back to California. I had John on yesterday for like 45 minutes, and they, basically gave him these 4 weeks to essentially grow a little bit more. I was at his workout yesterday morning. He looks absolutely terrific. So as much as we're making this story sovereignty versus journalism, Derby winner versus Preakness winner, Baeza's presence here really needs to be appreciated. In addition, he's going to be the best price of the 3, and he has a tactical advantage, very much a tactical advantage over sovereignty, and a little bit less of an advantage over journalism. Saratoga, when it comes to this main track, 1 1/8 and beyond, this is a track that favors speed very often. We had a lot of rain over the last several weeks, and the track has been very tight and has played very fast. And I would recommend to people watching the racing leading up to Saturday, watch for speed, the 1 1/8 races in particular. Baeza has got an advantage here because he's probably going to be sitting 4th, journalism probably sitting 5th. Baeza is going to get the first run on the leaders, and he may be the horse to catch in the stretch. And he's going to be 9-2, 4-1. I mean, he's going to be an appealing price compared to journalism, probably 8-5 morning line. That's probably about right. And sovereignty is 2-1. He might be 9-5. I think sovereignty and journalism will end up very close in price. So Baeza tactically probably has a little bit of an edge. From a rooting standpoint, I want to see journalism win.
Interesting, all the stuff you had to share there, especially about Baeza, because we all know he was the late addition to the Derby with a couple of those late scratches.
Right.
So just let me make sure I'm getting you correct. You would not be at all surprised to see Baeza possibly pull off an upset and
Sure.
Finish place 1st or 2nd.
I mean, any of the top pace lots, he can absolutely win this. I wouldn't necessarily say he's better bred for the 1 1/4. Don't forget, we're not running 1.5 miles up here. We're running 1.25 miles again this year before we get back to Belmont, which, by the way, the news last week, of course, that Belmont will get to host a Breeders' Cup again, not since 2005. But in 2027, the new Belmont Park will get our first Breeders' Cup in over 2 decades, which is exciting. I wouldn't be surprised if Baeza wins this outright. Absolutely not.
Interesting. Good stuff there. I do want to go back to journalism for just a second. He enters the race as the favorite, and he is the only horse in the field that will have run in all 3 of the Triple Crown races, which I commend Michael McCarthy for. Now, we know he's a good horse, but when you think about the workload over the last 5 weeks and, the stress of what he's been asked to do, you have to imagine that that's somewhat of a disadvantage for him. Give us some of your thoughts on that.
Not necessarily. Each horse, every horse is an individual. Mm-hmm. And when they come into a season like this, it just depends on how they react. He's a horse that seems to be thriving on the work, for instance, and from that standpoint, he does not look Derby Barbie making an appearance home from school. He has not lost any weight. He has not tucked up, as they say, meaning gotten so fit that kind of his gut moves up tight into his hindquarters. He looks just as fresh and light on his feet and aggressive in a good way as he has going into Preakness, going into Derby. I was there for the Sunday for his workout. He absolutely has, showing no signs of any ill effect. Does that mean that that he wins? No, it doesn't. You'll note that, for instance, part of the post-Preakness analysis included some concerns from Aaron Wellman, the owner, Eclipse Thoroughbreds, and Michael, and even Umberto Rispoli, that on the backstretch and into the turn, it didn't look like journalism was firing in the Preakness. And it really wasn't until Rispoli, started to really ask him that he picked it up. And then, of course, he finished. I mean, the way he finished the race, to go catch Gosger like he did, a horse, to go catch a horse loose in space like that is very difficult, let alone to do it after what he went through, at the 8th pole, the whole banging incident with Baffert and Asmussen's horse. Yeah. I don't think there's any ill effect, and I think Rispoli learned something in the Preakness. We should also note, he drew the 7. And that's going to give Rispoli a lot of options. In essence, he may be able to avoid the kind of trouble that he found in the Preakness and in the Santa Anita Derby by being out in the 7th path to start. Once the gates open, as they go past the stands for the first time, Rispoli will have his choice of where to set up shop. And from that standpoint, journalism should get a very comfortable trip. And Rispoli can go out and chase the leaders at whatever point he chooses to. From that angle, we should mention Rodriguez for Baffert drew the 3, and then the late addition of Bobby Flay and Jimmy Ventura's Crudo ends up being very important because Crudo is going to provide some pace pressure. Rodriguez was thought originally coming into the week as maybe loose on the lead. But now Crudo is there to keep company with him, which is a positive. So Baeza and journalism will be stalking, and journalism should be very comfortable when it comes time to go get the leaders.
So you mentioned that, all horses are individuals and, they're all different, of course. But on the flip side of that question I just brought up, you have Sovereignty, who you mentioned has been up at Saratoga kind of hiding away. Is there any kind of advantage for a horse? How do they react, having more time to acclimate themselves because he's been there since the Derby has finished? Does that give him a bit of an edge over journalism or the field?
There's, for those that follow what's known as sheet methodology, Thorograph, Jerry Brown's Thorograph product, and the late Len Ragazzin's Ragazin sheets. And the theory in the last 30 years of sheet methodology is that certain performances, particularly new top efforts, meaning an effort that produces the best performance figure, whatever your measurement is, Byers, Thorograph, Ragazin, whatever number you use, Equibase numbers, Brisnet numbers. Anytime a horse runs a new top, a new career best, you essentially have to gauge how much rest you feel they need before you bring them back. And this is 5 weeks is a number that has become sort of industry accepted, after a big effort, anywhere from 5 to 7 weeks. So 35 to 50 days between starts. And this is a discussion that's actually very interesting and rather complex, which is how much we've learned about the stress that you put on a horse, when they're running, peak performance. And this has been essentially the result of all of that, study and understanding, which is that they need more time than we used to give them. But at the same time, when you see what journalism's doing, and if he goes out and wins or runs another big race, you're going to have a different set of evidence saying, well, here's a horse that ran 3 fabulous races in 35 days. I mean, in 5 weeks. It isn't even so much what he does in that third performance. It's what happens subsequently. How much time is Michael McCarthy going to need to give him to recoup from this effort? Because, you do have big summer opportunities. You've got the Haskell in mid-July at Monmouth. We've got the Jim Dandy, which leads to the Travers in August. And then we've got the Pennsylvania Derby in mid-September, third week in September, leading toward the Breeders' Cup. So there's 3 more important Grade 1 races at a 1 1/8 mile, 1 1/4, and a 1 1/8 that are yet to come. Well, how much time is journalism going to need to maybe participate in races like those? Right. So some of these questions can't be answered until you're at the next depot, at the next train station, where they're going to disembark, and you're going to see them run again, because there's evidence in both directions. I mean, Seattle Slew went through the Triple Crown undefeated, and then the ownership decided they wanted to run him again weeks later, and he went sideways. So it all depends. I mean, again, each horse is going to provide a certain set of evidence for a trainer. How many days does he go off of his feed? Does he not eat for the next 2-3 days? Does he do things like lay down in his stall that he doesn't ordinarily do? I mean, there's a lot of horses that take care of themselves in that regard. They rest. They know that that they're in that stall for 23 hours a day, and they don't. They're going to make the most of their opportunity to rest. Yeah. So these are all the things that professional horse trainers come to understand in watching and getting to know their animal and reading those signs. Right. So it's hard. I mean, certainly Bill Mott is saying that Sovereignty's doing great. And in fact, he even said that Sovereignty's been a little aggressive, which he's not happy with. And what that means is that's a horse is so fit, and he's showing signs that he wants to run, which again gets back to the point that he should have run in Baltimore. Yeah. And then set up what would be, either a rubber match between the two of them, or or maybe somebody else. Maybe his presence changes the whole dynamics of the Preakness, and you get a different result entirely. You just don't know. That's what makes this game as fascinating as it is. Yeah, absolutely. Now, given what you just mentioned, Bill Mott's comments about Sovereignty is the horse who was more well-rested. Do you have any issues with journalism being the favorite, given that he also lost in their one head-to-head matchup? In their head-to-head matchup, and that that certainly came up yesterday when David Aragona made journalism the favorite. But even Bill Mott last night at the draw, even Bill acknowledged that he understood why journalism would be the favorite in this setting. He was the Derby favorite. He won in really impressive fashion, obviously, in Baltimore. And there's other certain dynamics that seem to be pushed in his direction. So David Aragona is not making a judgment when he makes journalism the favorite. He's the morning line is the morning line odds makers thought about how people are going to bet the race, and from that standpoint, you can understand it. I think they're going to be very close. I think their odds will be they'll be separated by less than they are on the line. We've covered a lot here, but one thing I haven't asked you, if you're ready and willing, do you have a prediction for us? I'll pick journalism, and it's something of a root as much as anything. Baeza is the right price to utilize. Certainly, not that he's going to be a big price, but I mean he's probably $10, probably a $10 horse if he wins. But it's the three of them. Journalism, Sovereignty, and Baeza, they're the horses, and there's not, there's really, I mean, Rodriguez has run a race that puts him, within eye shot. I suppose Hill Road, if you're looking for a horse that's going to clunk up and maybe pick up a piece and potentially end up third or fourth, I guess Hill Road probably is that horse with Irad. Chad Brown is going to sit around down inside. But the top three, it frankly will be a little surprising if anybody invades the top three.
Okay. All right. You heard it from our guy, Steve Byk, host of At the Races, SiriusXM Radio every day, Monday through Friday, 9 to 12. Check him out. I listen to him quite often, and I really, really enjoy the show. And Steve, I really, really enjoy your insight and coming on with us and being so generous with your time. Thank you so much today.
Anytime, Evan. I hope everybody enjoys the Belmont. Don't forget, it's on Fox, not on NBC.
That's right. Take care, Steve.
You too.